The writers I discovered were writers who were not known at all, and that was part of the fun. The whole idea of a Yiddish culture in Zionist Palestine was something that had not been studied, that had been discounted. It had been officially repressed. Once I started doing research, though, I found a great number of periodicals, several books that were published, and what I found very interesting about these writers, and they're all mentioned in my book, which came out in 2004, and in these journals, that very often, because their language was Yiddish, they were able to sound a critique of the Zionist enterprise that Hebrew writers did not do for various reasons. Most Hebrew writers kept, the official Zionist line. I can think of some notable exceptions, but most of the Hebrew writers during the 30s, 20s, 30s, 40s, and many of the Yiddish writers were also, very fervent Zionists, and many of them were kibbutz members. There's the poet Yael Chaver, who was a kibbutz member, and others, many others. But I found among them, so I had all this enormous number of, enormous amount of sources, and I found among them quite a few who sounded different notes. One of them, I think maybe so I worked mainly on three writers. One was Zalman Broches, who wrote about Palestine before the First World War, very romantically on one level, but also very conflicted on another level, sort of idolizing Arab culture while at the same time recognizing that he could never really become an Arab. Another writer was Avrom Rives, who was a socialist and had been published in Poland. He was an expressionist. I learned, once I realized what they were all, this was the, modernist period, which in Yiddish literature, expressionism sort of appeared a bit later than it did. There's this time lag. Rives was very much an expressionist and also attuned to Arab life, Arab culture. One of his most interesting stories is about a teenage Arab boy living in Jaffa who is completely enthralled by Tel Aviv. So it's very interesting to see, this great Zionist enterprise, which it was. I'm not knocking it at all. But seeing it through the eyes of this Arab teenager from Jaffa. The third writer was a poet who had been published in Poland, in Polish. This is Rikuda Potash, who immigrated to Palestine in the 30s and continued to write in Yiddish. She was very individualist. She was not a member of the organization, the Association of Yiddish Journalists and Writers, which was organized in the 20s under the auspices of the British government. Potash was not a member of this group. She was, and she wrote. She wrote in Yiddish, and what I found very, very interesting, she was the librarian of the Bezalel Art School in Jerusalem, where her brother was the director of the institute at the time in the 30s. She became very interested in Mesopotamian mythology, ancient Near Eastern sources, and it's really captivating to see these ancient Near Eastern mythologies through the prism of her Yiddish sensibility. And I think offhand, some very interesting poem cycles talk about Babylonian gods and the Hanging Gardens of Babylon and the ancient Near Eastern god of Tammuz, who's also an Egyptian god. So I think the Palestinian experience of these Yiddish writers was really very, very special, very unique. And I think I was very fortunate to have discovered that and become so immersed in it and so captivated in it that I was able to complete my work and publish my book and give talks at conferences, other places. I was a guest at the Yiddish Book Center a number of years ago.